The morning sun hadn't fully broken over Atlanta yet, but Marcus Turner could feel it coming. That heat that would make the asphalt shimmer by noon. He stood outside the McDonald's on Cascade Road with a warm breakfast in his hand and exactly $3.40 in his pocket. The sandwich was still warm. The coffee was still steaming. These small luxuries represented a careful calculation. Skip lunch today. Skip dinner tomorrow. Make it stretch until Friday's paycheck came through. Marcus was 42 years old, though his reflection suggested he'd lived more than that. Night shift work at the city's electrical grid maintenance had a way of aging a man. For the past 12 years, he'd driven through Atlanta's darkness, managing the infrastructure that kept lights on in thousands of homes, while his own house sat on the edge of darkness, metaphorically and literally. Last month, he'd almost missed the electric bill entirely. His daughter Amara was 11. She had her mother's eyes and her father's habit of noticing things that weren't said. That morning before he left for the early breakfast run, she'd asked him something that stayed with him. "Dad, are we good for lunch this week?" The practiced smile came automatically. "Yeah, we're good. Not a full lie. Not the full truth either." Good was a complicated word in their household. Marcus was reaching for his car door when the voice stopped him. "Can I have a bread?" He froze. The voice didn't chase him the way most voices did outside this McDonald's. It didn't rise with desperation. It didn't fall with practiced sadness. It didn't have the edge that came from survival desperation. It just stayed there, steady, quiet, certain, like the person asking had already accepted rejection before he even turned around. That wrongness made him turn. She sat on the curb by the corner. Not slouched, not sprawled the way someone broken by the streets usually sat. She was positioned upright. Her spine straight like habit had taught her that posture mattered. Her dress was a faded green torn at the hem. It hung on her frame like it had lost its grip on the woman wearing it. Her hair was rough, unbrushed, matted in places where weather and time had done their work. But her face didn't match the street. Marcus narrowed his gaze, studying her more carefully. Her features had a structure to them, high cheekbones, a sharp jawline. The kind of bone structure that suggested a sculptor had designed her. Even more unusual were her eyes. Those weren't lost eyes. Those weren't the confused, distant eyes of someone whose mind had checked out. Those were thinking eyes. Alert. Watching everything. Watching him specifically. And there was something else. She was sitting on that curb the way someone sits when they've made a decision. Not when they're waiting for one to be made for them. She wasn't pleading with her body language, wasn't performing desperation. She was simply waiting to see what kind of man he was. Marcus checked his pocket out of reflex, already knowing what he'd find. $3.40. Exactly enough for the breakfast he was holding. Not enough for two. That morning had started tight. Too tight. He'd stood in his kitchen staring at 2 eggs, like they were supposed to multiply if he looked long enough at them. Amara had walked in quietly, already dressed, her backpack hanging off one shoulder like she didn't want to complain, but also didn't want to pretend everything was fine. "Dad, are we good for lunch this week?" The practiced smile. The practiced lie. "Yeah, we're good." Now he was looking at a woman asking for bread, and all he had was $3.40. He looked back at her, and she was still waiting. Not desperate, not even particularly hopeful. Just waiting to see what he would do. Something shifted in Marcus then. Something that made him turn away from his car and walk back into the McDonald's. The line at McDonald's was short. Marcus ordered a bag, not the smallest bag, but not trying to overcompensate either. He got a breakfast sandwich, hash browns, and orange juice. The total came to $8.73. He handed over a $10 bill and watched the change drop into his hand. When he walked back outside, she was still sitting on the curb, In exactly the same position. He walked up to her and held out the bag. Here. She looked at the bag like it didn't belong to her world. For a moment she didn't take it, just studied it like she was trying to understand what accepting it would mean. You didn't have to do that, she said. Her voice was softer now, but controlled. The kind of control that came from practice, not from shyness. Marcus gave a small shrug. Yeah, I did. She took the bag carefully, like it might disappear if she moved too fast. Thank you, Marcus, he said. Anna, she replied. She opened the bag slowly, took a bite, then another. Then she stopped. Her expression didn't break, didn't show pain or sadness. But something shifted beneath the surface, something like recognition or memory. You okay, Marcus asked. She swallowed, her throat tightening just slightly. I forgot what hot food tastes like. That line stayed in the air longer than it should have. Marcus didn't respond immediately, because some things didn't need quick answers. Some things needed to be let alone, so they could settle into what they actually meant. You staying out here, he finally asked. Anna hesitated. Her eyes moved across the street, tracking the passing cars, the people who had already decided she didn't exist. Then she said it, clear and quiet and final. I don't want to sleep here tonight. Marcus exhaled slowly. He already knew what was coming next, and he wasn't prepared for it. I got a daughter, he said. I can't just bring someone home like that. It was the responsible answer, the careful answer, the answer that protected Amara. I understand, Anna replied quickly. Then she leaned forward slightly, and her voice gained something. Not desperation, but intention. I can cook, I can clean, I can help your daughter get ready for school, I can take care of your home. Marcus said nothing. He was still calculating, still trying to figure out what didn't add up. Anna continued, and he heard the edge of her real offer underneath the words. I don't need money. I just need somewhere to lay my head. Please. Marcus glanced at his car, then back at her. The calculation was happening in real time now. Part of him knew this was a risk. Part of him knew there was something about this woman that didn't match the streets. Part of him knew his daughter came first. But he also knew what it felt like to have nowhere to go. Not literally, but in the way that mattered. You got ID, he asked. Not on me? Family, no. Anyone looking for you? He watched her carefully when he asked this one. A pause. Then yes. His jaw tightened slightly. What kind of trouble are you in? She looked down briefly, and when she looked back up, there was honesty in her eyes. The kind that comes from someone who's already decided to tell part of the truth, not the kind you think she said. Silence stretched between them. Cars passed. Life moved. Nobody stopped to witness what was happening on this corner of Atlanta. Marcus let out a slow breath, like he was arguing with himself. And he was. Every instinct told him to protect himself, to protect his daughter, to not let complicated situations into his carefully controlled life. Then he thought about Amara, about the homework she couldn't afford tutoring for, about the meals she ate in measured portions, about the careful way she never asked for more. All right, he finally said. Anna looked up immediately. He raised a finger. Firm! You don't make me regret this. For the first time, her expression changed. Not excitement, not relief in a loud way, just something releasing quietly. Like pressure she'd been holding finally had somewhere to go. Thank you, she said. They got into the car, and Anna sat in the back. Her hands rested neatly on her lap, and her eyes occasionally drifted outside, like she was studying a life she'd been removed from. Marcus drove in silence for a few minutes, processing what he'd just committed to. You always talk like that, he asked, without looking back at her. She looked up slightly from her contemplation of the passing city. Like what, like you're not from the street? There was a faint pause. And then I'm not. Marcus let out a quiet breath. Yeah, I figured. And that was all he said about it. Not yet. Not now. The questions could wait until they were out of the car. When they pulled up to his house, a modest colonial on a quiet street with one large oak tree out front and a yard that needed mowing, he turned slightly in his seat. My daughter's inside. She's 11. Anna nodded. Her name is Amara. I won't scare her, good Marcus said. He stepped out of the car, and Anna followed. Inside, Amara was sitting on the couch with a book she wasn't quite reading. Her eyes moved up from the page when they entered, tracking from Marcus to Anna and back again. The question was in her face before it came out of her mouth. Dad? This is Anna, Marcus said. She's staying with us for a bit. Amara blinked at the woman standing in their living room, still wearing the faded dress, still covered in the dust of the streets, but now standing in their domestic space like some kind of contradiction. Okay, Amara said carefully. The way children do when they're being careful not to ask too many questions. Marcus turned to Anna. Bathroom's down the hall. Clean up. He paused, then added quieter. You don't have to wear that. There are clothes in the closet. My wife's. The word lingered, not heavy, but present. Past tense carrying its own weight, Anna nodded slowly. Thank you. Hours later, when Marcus returned with Amara from her after-school program, he stopped at the door. Because something was different. The house felt intentional, clean, calm, alive. Amara whispered beside him, Dad, did we come to the wrong house? Marcus stepped in slowly. No, this is ours. And then from the hallway, Anna stepped out. But she wasn't the same woman from the curb. Her hair was neat now, falling softly past her shoulders like it had remembered how to move. Her face, without the grime and street dust, revealed a structure to it. That made Marcus understand something he wasn't supposed to understand at this moment. High cheekbones, sharp jawline, the kind of face that had been taught to ask for things and expect to receive them. She wore Margaret's dress, a simple navy thing his late wife had loved, the one she'd worn to dinner parties when life still had those kinds of rituals. On Anna, it looked like something from another story entirely, like she'd stepped out of one world and into another, and the transition had already happened the moment she touched the fabric. Marcus didn't realize he'd stopped breathing. The woman standing in front of him didn't look like someone who'd asked for bread that morning. She looked like someone who had once owned power and was simply waiting to take it back. Amara tugged lightly at his shirt. Dad. He blinked, snapping back to the present. You're doing that thing again, she said softly. What thing? When you look like you forgot what you were thinking. He cleared his throat, straightening slightly. Yeah, I'm good. But he wasn't good because nothing about Anna Shelby made sense. She stood there calmly, like she hadn't just walked out of a completely different life and into his house within a few hours, like she hadn't been sitting on a curb that morning asking for bread. Like she hadn't just transformed. You cleaned all this, Marcus finally asked, his voice low and careful. Anna nodded once. I didn't know what else to do with myself. Marcus stepped further into the kitchen, running his fingers across the counter. No dust, no crumbs, even the stubborn stain near the sink. The one he'd given up on weeks ago was gone. How did you even remove that, he asked. Half to himself. Anna glanced at the spot. Vinegar and baking soda. Let it sit before scrubbing. Marcus turned his head slowly, looking at her again. Not as someone he'd helped, but as someone unfamiliar, someone who knew things, someone who'd been taught household management in a way that went beyond survival. Amara stepped forward, circling Anna like she was trying to solve a puzzle. You look different, she said bluntly. Marcus was about to correct her. But Anna smiled softly. "I feel different," Anna replied. Amara tilted her head. "Did you fix the house too?" Anna's smile grew slightly. "Maybe the house fixed me too." That answer settled gently in the room. Not forced, not dramatic, just real. And for the first time, Marcus understood that this woman had just become part of their story, whether he'd fully agreed to it or not. The first 3 days followed a pattern that Marcus found simultaneously reassuring and deeply unsettling. Anna woke before anyone else, 5:47 a.m. to be precise, though Marcus only knew this because he heard her moving quietly through the kitchen, making the kind of sounds that came from knowing exactly where everything belonged. By the time he was up, the coffee was made. Not just made, but made well. The kind of coffee that suggested she'd used quality grounds and understood the relationship between water temperature and extraction. Breakfast appeared. Not cereal dumped into bowls, but actual food. Eggs cooked to a specific temperature. Toast cut at angles. Fresh orange juice poured into glasses instead of plastic cups. Small details. Tiny gestures of care that Amara didn't quite understand were unusual, because she was 11 and assumed all fathers lived the way most people lived, with effort and intention behind the everyday rituals. On the second day, Marcus found Anna in the garage, organizing tools he'd left scattered since Margaret died. Not just organizing them, but actually understanding what they were. She held a precision screwdriver like someone who'd used one before. She moved the socket wrenches with familiarity. When she noticed him watching, she didn't apologize. "I didn't touch anything you might need," she said. "Just group things by function." Marcus said nothing, just filed that away as another piece of the puzzle that didn't fit. By the fourth day, something had shifted in the house. It wasn't just clean anymore. It was cared for. The kind of care that comes from someone who understands that spaces hold emotional weight. Margaret's things, the ones Marcus had been unable to pack away, had been treated with respect, dusted carefully, arranged thoughtfully, never moved far enough that he wouldn't recognize their positions. Amara had stopped being cautious and started being openly delighted. Anna helped with homework, not just providing answers, but actually teaching. She made Amara's favorite foods without having been asked what they were. She braided her hair in the morning without Amara having to ask. Moving with a kind of practice ease that suggested she had done this before. And Marcus watched all of it and tried to figure out what she was. On the evening of the fourth day after Amara was in bed, Marcus found Anna standing by the kitchen window, looking out at the darkened street. "You need something?" he asked. She turned, and for a moment she looked vulnerable in a way she hadn't before. "No, I was just thinking about how strange it is to be still," she said. "I've spent so long moving, so long strategizing, and now I'm just still." Marcus leaned against the counter. He was still trying to figure her out, but his resistance was weakening. She was here. She was helping. She was good to his daughter. Maybe the questions could wait. "Stillness is good," he said. "Stillness is healing." Anna turned to face him fully, and there was something in her expression that suggested she was deciding whether to trust him with something real. "I used to know that," she said quietly. "When I was younger, I knew that stillness mattered, but I forgot somewhere along the way. I built things, big things, and I convinced myself that motion was the same as meaning." Marcus didn't ask follow-up questions, he just listened. "One day," Anna continued, "I realized I was so busy moving that I couldn't remember why I'd started moving in the first place. There was a story in that statement, a whole life compressed into 3 sentences. Marcus heard it in the way her voice changed slightly at the end. Not sad exactly, but heavy with the weight of real things. "So what happened?" he asked. Anna turned back to the window. "Everything stopped. I lost everything. And when there's nowhere to go and nothing to move toward, you finally learn to stand still." That night, Marcus lay awake longer than usual, thinking about the woman sleeping in his guest room, thinking about how little he actually knew her, thinking about how much she already mattered to his daughter, thinking about the way she'd moved through his kitchen with the competence of someone who had never had to scramble or figure things out the hard way. She'd been running from something, that much was clear. But what scared him most wasn't what she'd been running from. It was how calm she seemed about having stopped running. One weekend, Marcus decided to push for answers. It started small. They were all at the dinner table. A moment that had become routine now. Amara was talking about school, about a history project, about the way her teacher was always annoyed at her for asking too many questions. Never apologize for questions, Anna said, and something in the way she said it made Marcus pay attention. This wasn't just conversational advice, this was something she believed in her bones. Questions are the only way to understand anything real. Did your parents teach you that? Amara asked innocently. Anna paused, and Marcus watched the pause happen. It was brief, barely a second, but it was there. No, Anna said finally. I learned that in a boardroom. Took me a long time to understand it applied everywhere. Marcus set down his fork. A boardroom, Anna's eyes moved to his, and he saw something happen behind them. Calculation, a decision being made, how much to tell, how much to risk. I used to work in a corporate environment, she said carefully. It was a long time ago. What kind of corporate environment? Marcus pressed. The kind where you spend most of your time trying to convince other people that your way is the right way, Anna replied. And very little time actually knowing if it is. Amara was picking at her food now, sensing the shift in conversation without understanding it. Did you like it? Marcus asked. At first, Anna said, I was very good at it. I had authority. People listened to me. I made decisions that affected thousands of people, and I told myself that was what success looked like. And now Marcus asked. Anna looked at Amara, then back at Marcus. Now I'm not sure I was any good at it at all. I think I was just good at convincing myself that motion was the same as meaning. There was that phrase again. Motion as meaning, a woman running from something, hiding in a working-class home, cooking meals and braiding hair and organizing garages like she was learning what stillness meant. Marcus didn't ask more questions that night, but he started watching her differently. He started noticing the way she moved through the world, like she'd been trained for something bigger. The way she held a knife, the way she understood the logic of things, not through instruction, but through some kind of deep competence that came from having done them before. And underneath all of it, he started noticing something else. He was becoming attracted to her, not just physically, though that was there too. The way the light caught her face when she was concentrating, the way she moved with an easy grace that had nothing to do with the dress she was wearing, and everything to do with someone who'd been taught to move through the world with intention. But deeper than that, he was attracted to the intelligence in her, to the way she understood Amara without having to ask what she needed, to the way she seemed to understand him, even though he told her nothing about himself, and that scared him more than anything else. 2 weeks into Anna's stay, life had developed a rhythm. That felt almost normal, except it wasn't normal at all. It was better than normal. It was what normal would feel like, if someone actually cared about making it that way. Marcus would come home from his night shift at 6:30 a.m., exhausted in the way that came from working while the rest of the world slept. He'd expect to find chaos, a daughter not yet ready for school, a house still in morning disorder. Instead, he'd find coffee ready, breakfast prepared, Amara already showered, already dressed, already prepared for the day ahead. Anna would have woken up hours before, moving quietly through the house, making sure everything was ready. She'd made a habit of disappearing after dropping Amara off at school, spending the daylight hours doing some kind of work that Marcus never quite understood. She'd return in the late afternoon, just before Amara got home, and she'd be there when his daughter walked through the door. It was the kind of domestic infrastructure that Marcus had been trying to construct alone for 3 years, and had failed to achieve. And Anna had done it, not just efficiently, but with what felt like genuine care. One afternoon about 3 weeks in, Marcus came home to find Amara at the kitchen table with Anna, and both of them were laughing. Real laughter, the kind that came from something actually funny, not forced or polite. What Marcus asked, setting down his work bag. "Tell him," Amara said to Anna between giggles. Anna was trying not to smile too big. "Your daughter has a gift for mathematical wordplay." She was just explaining a joke she made up about geometry. Amara straightened up, proud. A line walks into a bar and the bartender says, "Sorry, we don't serve your kind here." And the line says, "That's fine, I'm just passing through." Marcus groaned appropriately, and Amara laughed even harder. But what struck Marcus, what made him pause and really look at the scene in front of him, was how natural it looked. How right. As if Anna had always belonged in this kitchen, laughing with his daughter, making terrible math jokes. That night after Amara was in bed, Marcus found Anna on the back porch. She liked to stand there at night, looking out at the small yard, smoking nothing. He'd noticed she never actually lit anything. "Just breathing in the darkness. She's smart," Anna said without him asking. "Smarter than most kids her age. She sees connections other people miss." "Yeah," Marcus agreed, coming to stand beside her. "Her mom was like that too." Anna turned slightly. "Margaret, yeah." It was the first time he'd said his wife's name in conversation with Anna. It felt like a small risk. "What was she like?" Anna asked, and Marcus could hear genuine curiosity in the question, not performative. Not the kind of curiosity that was trying to seem sympathetic, actually wanting to know. She was... Marcus paused, trying to find words for someone he'd loved for 15 years and lost for 3. She was the kind of person who made things matter. Small things, birthdays, terrible jokes. The way she'd notice when someone was sad before they knew themselves. He swallowed. "She would have liked you." It was a dangerous thing to say. It opened a door that Marcus wasn't entirely sure he should open. But Anna just nodded slowly, accepting the compliment without deflecting or minimizing it. "I would have liked her too," Anna said quietly, "for making you, for making Amara." By the 4th week, something had shifted in how Marcus and Anna existed together. They'd moved past the transactional phase, her cooking and cleaning, him providing shelter, into something more complex. Conversations that lasted longer than necessary, moments where their hands would almost touch, and neither of them moved away. It happened on a rainy afternoon. Amara was at school, Marcus had the day off, and had stayed home. Anna was making something in the kitchen, some kind of complex sauce that required patience and attention. "Why do you care so much?" Marcus asked. Anna didn't look up from what she was doing. "About what this? Us." "Amara. You could have left. You could have found somewhere easier." Anna set down her spoon. She was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was different, more real, less controlled. "I've spent a lot of my life in spaces where people care about me because of what I can do for them," she said. "Because of my title, my authority, my ability to make things happen. And I convinced myself that was the same as being cared about." She turned to face him. "But it's not. It's just extraction with better manners." "So what changed?" Marcus asked. "You did," Anna said simply. "Amara did. You let me help you not because you needed someone to help. You had been managing. You would have kept managing. You let me help because you saw someone who needed to help. You gave me something to do that mattered because you understood that sometimes being useful is the same as being seen." Marcus stepped closer. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller than it was. "That's not what this is," he said quietly. "What you're doing here, that's not just about being useful." Anna met his eyes. No, she agreed. It's not. The space between them was loaded now, charged with something that had been building for weeks. You know I don't know who you really are, Marcus said. You know that. I know, Anna replied, and I know you don't care enough to push for answers yet, but someday you will, and that's going to hurt. It was the kind of warning that should have made him step away. Instead, it made him step closer. Tell me anyway, he said. Anna shook her head. Not yet, not until I'm sure. Not until I know that even when you know you'll stay. There was a story in that statement too. A life of leaving or being left. A woman who'd learned that love could become conditional. The moment the truth emerged. It happened 3 days later. Marcus had put Amara to bed, and he'd come downstairs to find Anna in the living room, looking at a photograph on the mantel. One of Marcus and Margaret from 10 years ago. Before illness. Before the things that break people. She was beautiful, Anna said, without looking away from the photo. She was, Marcus agreed. Anna finally turned to face him, and something in her expression had changed. The careful composure was still there. But underneath it was something rawer. Something that looked like the decision had been made. I'm going to tell you something, Anna said, and I need you to listen very carefully. What I'm about to do, I'm doing because I need to know if you'll stay. Not if you like me. Not if you're attracted to me. I need to know if you can actually stay. Marcus understood in that moment that he was being tested in a way he'd never been tested before. Anna reached up, her hand finding his face. Her skin was soft, in a way that suggested care, lotion, the kind of gentle maintenance that came from someone who had been taught to value herself. She drew him down toward her, and he let her. He was tired of questions. He was tired of protecting himself from the possibility of being happy. The kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't built on months of tension or desperate wanting. It was careful, deliberate. The kind of kiss between two people who understood that trust had to be established before anything else could matter. When they pulled apart, neither of them looked away. I didn't think I'd feel like this again, Anna said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus ran his thumb across her cheekbone. Careful, reverent, like touching something precious. Then don't overthink it, he said. She smiled. Not guarded, not calculated, just real. And for the first time, Marcus wondered if real was something she'd learned to forget. If the woman standing in front of him had spent so long being strategic, that being authentic had become foreign. 5 days later, Marcus was putting away laundry when he found it. The envelope was expensive, heavy paper, the kind you don't just pick up at a drugstore. It had a name written on the front in careful, precise handwriting. D.S. Marcus froze. D.S. Diana something. Diana. Shelby, no. That couldn't be. Shelby was such a specific name. The kind of name that belonged to people in magazines, not women sitting on curbs asking for bread. But his hands had already opened the letter before his mind caught up to tell him to stop. The text was short, professional, the kind of communication that had been drafted and redrafted by lawyers. Diana. The situation is contained. Evidence has been recovered. Your accounts will be unfrozen pending final judgment. We're expecting resolution within weeks, not months. You can stop hiding. Richardson Marcus read it 3 times, trying to make sense of the words. Evidence, accounts, judgment. This wasn't a letter from someone's past employer offering a job back. This was something legal, something significant, something that required lawyers to handle. He folded the letter carefully and put it back exactly as he'd found it, but his mind was already racing through the implications. She wasn't just someone who'd lost a job. Something had happened. Something large enough to freeze accounts and require lawyers. Something large enough that she'd needed to disappear. That evening when Anna came into the kitchen where Marcus was pretending to read the news, he watched her differently, looking for clues, signs, evidence of a woman who was waiting for something. She noticed immediately. What she asked. Nothing Marcus said, but his jaw was tight, and Anna, intelligent enough to read subtext in the way that came from years of high-stakes conversations, knew he was lying. "Marcus," she said carefully, coming to sit beside him. "Whatever you're thinking, I'm not thinking anything," he said. But he was. He was thinking that she'd never actually told him the truth. Not a lie, just an incomplete version. He was thinking that she'd been in his house for 5 weeks, and he still didn't know who she actually was. He was thinking that the risks he was taking were larger than he'd realized. Anna nodded slowly. Then she went back to the kitchen and continued making dinner. Her hands steady, but her eyes distant. But Marcus saw it, the tremor in her fingers, the first crack in the composure. And he understood that she was waiting for him to ask. Waiting for the other shoe to drop. Waiting for the moment when the truth would come out and everything would change. He didn't ask. Not that night. But the silence between them shifted. It was no longer the comfortable quiet of people who understood each other. It was the fraught quiet of people holding secrets, waiting to see which one would break first. The day after Marcus found the letter, he came home from his shift to find Anna sitting on the front porch. She was waiting for him, which told him everything. Anna didn't wait. Anna moved. Anna managed situations, but now she was sitting on the concrete step in the early morning light. Her hands folded in her lap, her composure finally visibly cracking. Marcus sat down beside her without a word. "I'm sorry," Anna said first, "for what Marcus asked, though you already knew. For not telling you. For letting this happen without you knowing what you were letting happen." She trailed off, her voice wavering for the first time in the 5 weeks Marcus had known her. "For being so selfish as to think I could have this." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The sun was rising over the neighborhood, painting everything in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere people were waking up to normal days. Somewhere people weren't having their lives turned upside down. "Tell me," Marcus said. Anna took a deep breath, and the words came out in a rush. Like she'd been holding them so long they'd started to suffocate her from the inside. "I was afraid," she started. "I'm still afraid. I spent so many years being afraid of losing power, of being replaced, of someone finding out I wasn't as smart as I pretended to be. And when everything actually happened, when I actually lost everything, the fear didn't go away, it just changed shape." "What happened?" Marcus asked quietly. "Fraud," Anna said. The word landed between them like something sharp. "At my company, my CFO, my closest advisor, someone I trusted with everything. He was stealing, building a scheme that used my company as the vehicle, and I didn't see it. I was too busy building the empire to notice it was rotting from the inside." Marcus absorbed this. A company, an empire. This woman who'd been sitting on a curb asking for bread had been running something big enough that it could be used for fraud, big enough that it could be noticed by authorities, big enough that it had nearly destroyed her. The letter, Marcus said, from Richardson. My lawyer, Anna confirmed. He's been handling everything, gathering evidence to prove I wasn't part of it, to clear my name. And she paused, and Marcus could see the weight of what was coming. And he called while I was at Amara's school yesterday. They found enough. They're charging someone? Who? Marcus asked. Richard Stratton, Anna said. My CFO. The man I promoted. The man I trusted. Marcus felt something turn in his chest. Not sympathy exactly, but understanding. She hadn't been guilty of fraud. She'd been guilty of trusting the wrong person, of being so focused on building something that she hadn't paid attention to who she was building it with. "So what does this mean?" Marcus asked. "It means the phone's going to ring," Anna said. "Tomorrow or the day after. And when it does, everything changes. My accounts get unfrozen. My company gets restored. The truth comes out publicly, and everyone's going to want something from me again." She looked at him then, and Marcus could see the fear underneath the confession. The fear that once he knew the full truth, he wouldn't want to stay. "Are you going to leave?" Anna asked quietly. Before the phone rings, before it gets complicated, Marcus considered this question seriously. He thought about Amara, about what it would mean to bring her back into his single-parent world. After she'd learned what it felt like to have two people who cared about her, he thought about what it would mean to go back, to the long nights alone, the careful calculations, the constant low-level exhaustion. But more than that, he thought about the woman sitting next to him, the woman who'd asked him for bread, because she'd understood something about him. That made her believe he'd help. The woman who'd made his daughter laugh. The woman who'd looked at him in the dark of the night and admitted she didn't know if she could trust him with the truth. "No," Marcus said finally. "I'm not going to leave." Anna's eyes filled, but before she could say anything else, the back door opened. Amara stood there in her pajamas, squinting against the morning light. "Mom used to say we're all messy," she said sleepily. "Is that why we're sitting outside?" The word hit Marcus like electricity. Mom. Amara had called Anna Mom. Anna's expression shifted, softened and hardened at the same time, as she looked at Amara. "Come on, baby," Marcus said, standing up and reaching for his daughter. "Let's get you ready for school." That night, Marcus lay awake for hours, and in the room down the hall he knew Anna was doing the same. 2 days later it happened on a quiet afternoon. Marcus had come home from his shift early, stopping by a grocery store to pick up things for the dinner Anna had planned. He was putting the groceries away when Amara came in from school, dropping her backpack by the door with the kind of carelessness that suggested she felt safe here, that this was home. Anna was by the window, and she wasn't calm. Her phone was in her hand, and it was ringing. She stared at the screen like it carried something heavy, something final. Marcus noticed immediately. "You gonna pick that up?" he asked. Anna didn't answer right away. Then slowly she did. "Hello?" Her voice was steady, but her fingers weren't. They trembled slightly as she held the phone. There was a pause on the other end. Then everything changed. "Are you sure?" Anna asked, her tone dropping. Another pause, longer this time. Marcus watched her closely. Amara had stopped writing her homework. "Where?" Anna asked quietly. A few seconds passed. Then, "Okay." She lowered the phone slowly, but she didn't move. Marcus stepped closer. "What happened?" Anna looked at him, and for the first time there was no holding back. The careful control was gone. The calculated composure had cracked completely. "They found him," she said. Marcus frowned slightly. "Who?" "The man who did it," she said. "The one who used everything I built to hurt people." The room went still. Amara stood up slowly, her eyes moving between them. "Is that good?" she asked softly. Anna let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. "Yes," she said. "It's over." But Marcus was still watching her because something else was coming. He could feel it. She could feel it. "There's more," he said, not a question. Anna nodded slowly. Then she looked at both of them, not as someone hiding anymore, not as someone surviving, but as someone finally stepping back into the truth. "My name is Anna Shelby," she said. Marcus didn't react. Not yet. He just listened. "I wasn't just someone who lost a job. I owned the company." Silence. Amara blinked. Like the whole company, yes, Anna replied. Marcus exhaled slowly, looking at her differently. Not in the way most people would. Not impressed. Not shocked. Just understanding. The fraud Anna continued. It didn't just damage people, it came back to me. My accounts were frozen. Lawsuits everywhere. Everything stopped until I could prove I wasn't behind it. She swallowed slightly. I used everything I had to fight it. Lawyers, investigators, every dollar. And when that ran out, Marcus said quietly, You had nothing left. Anna nodded. The room stayed silent for a moment. Not because they didn't understand, but because they did. Amara stepped forward slowly. So you were rich? Anna gave a small honest nod. Yes. Amara thought about that, then said something simple. Okay. Anna blinked slightly. Okay. You still make good food. Amara shrugged. Marcus let out a quiet breath, almost like a laugh he didn't want to fully release. But Anna looked between both of them, confused, a little overwhelmed. You don't care, she asked. Marcus's expression hardened. He stood up slowly, and the change in his bearing was immediate. When he spoke, his voice was different, not angry yet, but steel underneath. You lied to us, he said. I didn't lie. You admitted, Marcus said. Which is a lie for people like you. That hit harder than direct anger would have. You came to my car. Marcus continued, his voice steady but cold in a way Anna had never heard it. You let me help you. You let me believe I was saving you. And the whole time you were someone who could have what called a car service gone to a hotel, but instead you came to someone poor because it was safer. Because a working man would be less likely to hurt you than someone from your world. Anna wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. Because he was right. I didn't mean she started. I don't care what you meant, Marcus said. His voice was steady, colder than she'd ever heard it. I care about the fact that you used me to hide, and you let my daughter get attached while you were figuring out your exit strategy. Amara's eyes filled. Dad. Not now, Amara, Marcus said, his attention on Anna. Is that what this was? A convenient refuge? Anna stepped forward. Her voice was steady now, but different, authentic in a way it hadn't been. No, she said firmly. It started that way. Maybe. I was terrified. I needed somewhere safe. But this, she gestured between them. This stopped being about hiding 2 weeks ago. Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Prove it, he said. And that word landed like a challenge. Anna looked him directly in the eye. Everything I've done here was real. Every moment with Amara, every meal. Every time I chose to stay when I could have run. I could have taken money. I had access to accounts my lawyers didn't know about. I could have disappeared. But I chose to be here. With you. Until the phone call, Marcus said. Until I had to face what happened. Anna corrected. Until I could stop running long enough to admit that I wanted to stay. The space between them was loaded, not with attraction anymore, with the possibility of something deeper. Or something broken. I need to think, Marcus said finally. And he walked out of the room, leaving Anna and Amara alone in the kitchen. Amara looked up at Anna, her young face serious. Is he going to make you leave? Anna sat down slowly, because she didn't have an answer. For the first time, she genuinely didn't know. News broke publicly within 48 hours, the investigation that had been running quietly in the background for months suddenly became headline news. Billionaire CEO vindicated in $200 million fraud case. The details emerged in pieces through news reports, official statements, and the kind of careful legal maneuvering that only happened when lives and reputations were on the line. Richard Stratton, former chief financial officer of Shelby Capital, had embedded corruption deep within the company's structure. Over the course of 6 years, he'd used Anna's name, her authority, her reputation, to execute a scheme that moved money through subsidiary accounts, falsified documentation, and ultimately defrauded investors of over $200 million. The evidence was overwhelming. Encrypted files on his personal computer, testimony from accounting staff who'd been pressured to falsify records, financial trails that proved Stratton had acted deliberately and with full knowledge of what he was doing. Anna's culpability was negligence, not paying attention, delegating authority to the wrong person, being so focused on growth that she hadn't maintained proper oversight. It was a failure. But it wasn't a crime. Richard Stratton's was both. The verdict came down on a Thursday morning. Life imprisonment, no parole eligibility for 30 years. Anna sat in the courthouse gallery, watching Stratton's face as the verdict was read. His expression went through a series of transformations. Shock, then rage, then something hollow. He'd built a legacy on her name. And now he'd destroyed it. He'd had access to unlimited power through her authority, and he'd chosen to steal. Anna didn't feel relief when she heard the verdict. She felt something more complicated. Vindication and sadness, tangled together. Because it meant she'd been right to trust, and wrong to let her guard down enough, so that someone could betray that trust so completely. It also meant she'd have to face Marcus. Everything returned within a week. Accounts unfrozen, compensation approved, company restored to her name. The elite world opened its doors again, with the kind of eagerness that made Anna's stomach turn. Suddenly, the same people who'd abandoned her when the scandal broke were calling to congratulate her on her vindication. The same companies that had cancelled contracts were offering new ones. The same investors who'd pulled their money were requesting meetings. Her phone became an instrument of chaos. Emails flooded in, job offers, consulting opportunities, speaking engagements, media requests. Companies that had erased her from their memory the moment the fraud became public now wanted to leverage her story of overcoming adversity. It was Anna realized exactly what she'd been running from. She sat on the couch in Marcus's living room. Their living room now, though she wasn't sure if that was still true, and watched the notifications pile up on her phone. Opportunity after opportunity, everything she'd lost coming back doubled. Marcus came in from getting Amara ready for school. He leaned against the doorway, studying the scene. Anna with phone in hand. Notifications lighting up the screen like some kind of digital plague. "You going to answer those?" he asked. Anna looked at the phone, then placed it face down on the table. "Not right now." Amara poked her head in. "You're not going back?" Anna turned to her, and something in her expression shifted. "I will, eventually, but not the way I was going back before." Marcus studied her, waiting for the real answer. "What does that mean?" he asked. Anna looked at both of them. Clear, certain. "It means I'm not building a life that makes me lose myself again," she said. And the next morning, after another sleepless night, she made the calls. Marcus found her on the back porch at dawn. She'd been there since sunrise, based on the cold coffee in her hands. Her hair was up in a messy knot, and she looked smaller than she usually did. Or maybe he was just seeing her clearly for the first time, since everything had exploded. He sat down next to her without a word. The porch was quiet, just the sound of early morning birds and distant traffic. "I was angry yesterday," Marcus said, his voice careful and measured. "And it was fair anger. You did use us, even if you didn't mean to." "I know," Anna replied, "but here's what I kept coming back to," Marcus continued. "You could have lied all the way. You could have let me find out from the news. You could have disappeared and we'd have never known what happened. But instead you told us because you didn't want to lie to us anymore." Anna's throat tightened. That's not forgiveness, Marcus said. Forgiveness would be if I didn't feel what I felt yesterday. If your lie didn't sting. If I didn't have to wrestle with the fact that I helped you because I wanted to be the good guy. And you let me because you needed that. He turned to face her. But here's what I figured out last night, he continued. We both got something real out of that exchange. You got safety. I got to remember who I am when I'm helping someone. Not out of obligation, but out of choice. You let me choose you, and then you showed up every single day and proved that choice mattered. Anna's eyes had filled with tears, but she wasn't crying. Just the physical response to emotion finally being allowed to exist. I'm not forgiving you because you deserve it, Marcus said. His voice was steady now, more sure. I'm choosing to move forward because the alternative is losing you, and I'm not willing to do that. He reached over and took her hand. What about Amara? Anna asked. Her voice was smaller than it had been. She heard us fighting, Marcus said. She understands what you did, but she also understands that people are complicated and that sometimes the people we love make mistakes, and that love doesn't mean forgetting the mistakes. It means deciding to stay anyway. Anna's shoulders shook slightly. But I need something from you, Marcus said. Anything, Anna whispered. Don't promise me you won't lie again. That's not real. Instead, promise me that if you're going to hide something, you'll tell me before it explodes. Promise me you'll let me be part of your truth, even when your truth is complicated. Anna looked at their joined hands, then squeezed once. Hard. I promise, she said, and she meant it, in a way that felt like stepping onto solid ground for the first time. The calls came the next morning. Diana's lawyers, Diana's CFO, Diana's board of directors, the new board, the one that had been put in place during the scandal, and had actually done their jobs. Anna sat in Marcus's office. He'd finally let her use it as her own, with her phone on speaker, and made decisions that changed everything. I'm restructuring, she told them. Part-time only. I'm going to be focused on governance and oversight, not growth. Find a new CEO. Someone who understands ethics before expansion. I want a restitution fund established. Not PR. Not looking good. Actually making things right with the people who were hurt. But the company her CFO started, the company was built on fraud. Anna interrupted. I'm not interested in saving what was built on lies. I'm interested in building something better. And I can't do that if I'm working 80 hours a week, trying to prove something to people who've already decided what to think. When she hung up the phone, Marcus was standing in the doorway. That's going to cost you, he said. Not a question. Yes, Anna agreed. Billions probably. In stock value, in opportunity. In the kind of money that looks like security when you're terrified of losing everything again. Marcus came and sat next to her. Why? Anna looked at him, and then beyond him, toward the hallway where Amara was doing homework, doing the things normal kids did, not worried about the future, because she believed the people in her life had it handled. Because you were right, Anna said simply. I spent so long moving that I forgot why I started moving. I built things, big things, and I convinced myself that motion was the same as meaning. But it's not. Meaning is the people you choose to stay still with. She reached for his hand. You gave me something everyone in my old life tried to buy. You gave me the choice to matter, not because of what I could do, but because of who I was. Marcus squeezed her hand once. Later that afternoon, Amara came home from school and asked, You're staying? Anna pulled her close. I'm staying. Not because I have to, because I want to. Marcus watched them embrace, and something settled inside him. The anger had passed. The doubt had transformed into something else. Not certainty. Certainty was for people who hadn't been hurt. But something close. Something like trust. Something like the beginning of belief. The trial moved quickly after that. Richard Stratton had no real defense. The evidence was too complete, too damning. He'd been methodical in his theft, keeping meticulous records, which ironically meant his guilt was provable beyond any doubt. The prosecution built their case with the kind of precision that only came when a white-collar defendant had made the mistake of believing his own superiority. Anna testified during the trial, sitting in a witness stand in a courtroom that smelled of old wood and old money. She described the system she'd built, the delegation of authority, the way she trusted Stratton with her company, the way you trust someone with your life. Stratton sat at the defendant's table and watched her with an expression that was difficult to read. Rage, probably, the kind of rage that came from a man who'd built a career, on the assumption that he was smarter than everyone else, only to discover that the systems he thought were his to exploit had been designed specifically to catch people like him. When the verdict came back, guilty on 43 counts of fraud, Stratton's face went blank. The reality had finally hit him. 30 years, minimum, in federal prison. His career was over. His freedom was over. Everything he'd built, by standing on Anna's shoulders, was going to collapse. Anna watched the verdict with clear eyes, no satisfaction, just clarity. The legal system had done what it was supposed to do. Justice had been delivered, at least in the form that the law understood it. But justice, she understood, was more than what happened in courtrooms. 6 months after Stratton's sentencing, Shelby Capital held its first company-wide meeting under the new structure. Anna stood at the podium, and she looked different, more grounded, less like someone performing authority, and more like someone who'd actually earned it. She announced the new CEO, a black woman named Dr. Patricia Hayes, who'd spent her career fixing broken companies with integrity. She announced the restitution program, not a token gesture, but real money, real accountability, real effort to make things right. She announced her new role, Chief Ethics Officer, part-time, with the autonomy to implement real oversight, not looking good, but actually being good. The company would be smaller for a while, slower, less profitable, but it would be honest. When she finished speaking, the room didn't erupt in applause exactly, but there was a quality of recognition, a sense that something real had shifted. That power, when it was handled with actual care, meant something different than it had before. That evening, Marcus and Amara attended a company awards dinner. It was one of the rare formal events Anna attended now. She'd learned to say no to most of the public stuff, to stay in the background, to let the work speak for itself. As they walked through the ballroom, Marcus saw people studying them, trying to figure out what the relationship was. A black man in a suit that didn't quite fit the elite crowd. A young black girl in a dress her mother had carefully selected. And Anna, in a simple navy gown. No jewelry except the ring Marcus had put on her hand 2 months ago. A quiet proposal. No fanfare. Just him asking if she wanted to stay forever, and her saying yes. The looks didn't bother Marcus anymore. He'd spent years arranging his life according to what strangers thought a family should look like. Standing here now, in a room full of people making calculations about his rightful place in this world, he'd finally understood that their opinions didn't matter. What mattered was that Amara felt safe. What mattered was that Anna had chosen them. What mattered was that he'd chosen them both. Spring arrived with the kind of suddenness that made everything feel new. Amara's school held its annual art display, the same multi-purpose room where Family Day had gone so wrong. When Marcus had felt the weight of being different, of being judged, was now filled with student artwork. Paper lanterns swayed gently overhead. Parents wandered through with punch cups and cookies, chatting in clusters beneath the fluorescent lights. Marcus walked in with Amara on one side and Anna on the other. He felt eyes on them again, the same kind of eyes from that terrible family day. But now he carried himself differently. Let them look. He'd stopped arranging his life according to what strangers thought a family should resemble. Amara led them to her display board, pride evident in the way she moved. There were watercolor trees, crayon self-portraits, a clay bird with one wing slightly larger than the other, and in the center, a new drawing of a house under a deep blue sky. 3 figures stood in front of it holding hands. One of Amara's classmates stopped beside them. "Who's that?" she asked, pointing to Anna in the drawing. Amara looked up at Marcus, then at Anna. Neither of them answered for her, and that pause, that moment where they let her choose, was everything. Amara lifted her chin. "That's my family," she said. The girl accepted that with the simple ease children were capable of, when adults didn't teach them otherwise. "Cool," she said, and wandered off toward the cookies. Marcus felt something settle inside him, something that had been floating since Margaret died, since he'd learned that family could be fractured, since he'd believed for 3 years that his daughter would always be missing someone. Anna reached for his hand. He took it. A second later, Amara took his other hand without having to think herself into courage. They stood there together in the bright school lights, while laughter drifted around them, and spring pressed gently against the windows. Marcus had spent years believing love was measured mostly by what pain he could prevent. Standing there, hand in Anna's, Amara leaning against his side, the drawing of their family on the wall in front of them. He understood something better. Love was also measured by who returned, who told the truth, who did the hard work to become safe, who chose over and over not to let fear make every decision. Love was the woman who asked for bread, because she'd calculated that some people were worth the risk. Love was the man who took that risk, even though every calculation told him he couldn't afford to. Love was the child who drew a picture of wholeness and believed it into being. Sometimes a family begins with loss, sometimes it begins with survival, and sometimes it begins the moment someone refuses to walk away, when leaving would be easier. Diana Shelby had lost everything. In doing so, she'd found everything that actually mattered, and she wasn't willing to lose it again. The house was quiet the way it got in the early mornings. That peaceful quiet that only came when 3 people who loved each other were sleeping under the same roof. Marcus woke to the smell of coffee and breakfast being made. Not out of obligation anymore, but out of the kind of love that expressed itself through action, through the small gestures of care. When he came downstairs, Anna was there, making eggs the way Amara liked them, pancakes with the good syrup, fresh squeezed orange juice in actual glasses, instead of plastic cups, the kind of breakfast that said, "I'm staying. I chose this. I want to be here." Amara came down still half asleep and found her place at the table without being told. This was home now, not because it was perfect, nothing real ever is, but because it was chosen by all of them. As Marcus sat down and took the cup of coffee Anna handed him, he thought about the woman he'd picked up off a curb 11 months ago, about the journey from "can I have a bread" to "that's my family," about how love, real love, wasn't about saving someone. It was about recognizing that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about and choosing to matter anyway. His phone buzzed. A text from Amara's school about the spring concert. Anna squeezed his shoulder as she passed. A quiet moment of partnership. This was what forever looked like, when forever was actually chosen. Outside Atlanta was waking up to another day. Somewhere someone else was sitting on a curb, hoping for kindness. Somewhere someone else was hiding from a truth they'd have to face eventually. But here, in this quiet kitchen, there was just love, just family, Just the simple, extraordinary miracle of people who could have destroyed each other, instead choosing to heal. And that was enough. If this story stayed with you, subscribe our channel for more stories about grace, second chances, and the quiet courage it takes to love well. Because it matters. These stories matter. They remind us that the most powerful moments in our lives aren't the ones that happen in public. They're the ones that happen in quiet kitchens, on back porches at dawn, in the space between two people deciding that the risk is worth it. Marcus learned something that year, something that no one could have taught him. Love doesn't ask you to be perfect, it asks you to be present. Anna learned something too. That power without integrity is just weight. But integrity with presence, with actual care, that's what builds something that lasts. And Amara, she learned the simplest truth of all. That family isn't about who you start with. It's about who chooses to stay. So if you're out there, feeling like you don't belong anywhere, like you're asking for more than anyone's willing to give, remember this, there's always someone willing to take the risk. If you're willing to be honest about who you are, there's always someone ready to build something real. If you're willing to do the work, subscribe our channel. Because we believe in these stories, we believe in the power of second chances, we believe in the quiet courage it takes to love well, and we know, from watching thousands of you, that you do too. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.